Hi, I'm Bob Osterhout. I'd like to talk to you about creating healthy transitions. We all go through transitions, changes in life, where we turn a corner or change direction or move in a new way. And some of these we choose. We graduate from school, we find a new job. Others are thrust upon us. There's a loss or a disaster. Some are a result of a buildup of a conflict if there's a divorce or something like that. But there's a common thread that runs through every healthy transition. And when you find that people haven't made a healthy transition, there are components of that thread that are missing. And it's actually fairly simple and straightforward. There are three parts to a healthy transition. Okay? First, there's an ending. Second, there's what's been referred to, and I apologize, I don't remember the author, but it's a book from about 20 years ago simply called Transitions. But he referred to it as the neutral zone. And then there's a beginning. And the healthy way to go through a transition is you pass through the ending. You also then go through the neutral zone and experience that, and then start the beginning. The tendency is the ending is uncomfortable. Okay, it's usually painful. It involves letting go of things that we're used to. And so most of us just would like to jump to the beginning and get off to a new start and leave all that uncomfortable stuff behind. But I wind up seeing a lot of people in counseling because they did that, because they didn't go through the process of a transition. It's most obvious in relationships. I just started seeing a couple recently where both partners, they're now married, but they came together when they were in other relationships. And there is so much complication and distortion and just it's a real rat's nest in many respects, because he's still sunburned from his previous relationship, so she will do something that reminds him of his previous relationship and react to that, which reminds her of something from her previous relationship, and she reacts to that. And in some cases they're really arguing with their previous partners and not accomplishing anything with each other. So we have to sort all that through and actually back up and go through a healthy transition process. So I'd like to explain to you how that works and how you can do that. And it applies in a wide range of situations. The first step is the ending. And the ending is acknowledgement of the loss. And there are natural emotions that come with a loss. And even when you get married, there's an ending of being single, okay? And when you graduate, there's an ending of being in school. So it's a positive event that we celebrate, but there are losses connected with that. There's losses in how we see ourselves, losses in how we've lived our daily routine, losses in people that we have contact with, losses in ways we do things that have become part of our lives, and we really need to let go of those. And that takes some time, and it's important to allow that time. The tendency is to rush past that because most of those things are uncomfortable, and we don't like to be uncomfortable, but being uncomfortable is a part of being alive. And when we don't avoid that but simply pass through it, we keep on moving and wind up going in a healthy direction. So the ending process can last anywhere from a matter of weeks to months, depending on the situation. When there's a huge loss, and the largest, of course, are where there's a divorce or whether there's a death of someone that's close to us. Those take many months and often a year or more to fully go through that mourning process. The deeper the connection, the more time needs to be spent in the ending process. It's a simple process, but it's difficult and challenging and uncomfortable. And the primary work to be done there, and you can't work at it, you just have to work with it, is letting go and recognizing that's gone, and we mourn that and let that pass. Then there's this neutral zone, which in some respects is even more uncomfortable, but it's very well defined with that term, because it's like we're in neutral and we're not going anywhere and we don't know what we want. And that can be uncomfortable because we like to know, we like to be in charge, and I'm going forward, I know what I want to do and all this. But when there's a healthy transition, there's a time where we don't know that. And Einstein said it pretty well. He said that you don't just jump from one mountaintop to another mountaintop. You're at a mountaintop and then you go down into a valley and you go up another hill and then you come to a higher mountain, okay? And so there's a transition time in there where you don't know, because if you always knew what was going on, if you were never confused, you would never learn anything new or see anything in a new perspective. You would just be building on the old. And you've let go of the old, and now is the time, okay, what's important to me? What direction do I want to go? Where do I want my life to be, far down the road in this process? And some of that can be confusing and uncomfortable, but it's also a time of exploration and a time of discovery. And often I have students who come in and say, they feel bad because they can't make up their mind what they want to do. I really believe that's the wrong way to go about deciding a life course. That's something to be discovered. It comes from your heart, something within you. It comes from your potential and your gifts and your realization of that. And some people come in contact with that sooner, others later. It's not a question of timing so much as a question of a real connection, and people change their discovery of that, and that changes over time. But that transition process allows you to get in touch with where your nature is and what's important to you and what matters to you. So it's a very important step in the process. And then you go to the beginning. And now when you start the beginning, the most helpful thing is to look even further down the road and ask yourself, where do we want to be in 10 years? Let's say you're starting a new relationship, or you've just gotten married. What do we want this relationship to look like in 10 years? Get a sense of direction, not a fixed point. I want to be at this point at this time with this stuff or whatever, but a direction. We want it to be like this, to have these qualities, and then you back up. And how do we get there? Just like if I decide I want to go west. How do I do that? Well, if I'm in Michigan, I'm going to run into Lake Michigan, so I can go south or north. If I go north, I've got to go quite a ways longer, so I go south, and then I'm heading west again. So you ask those kinds of questions during the beginning. You try to look at it from a large perspective and realize that every step that you take moves you in a direction. And so the question to ask is, what direction is important, and how do I know that I'm heading in that direction, and how do I know if I'm moving away from that? So those are the components of a healthy transition. First there's an ending, then there's a neutral zone, and then there's a beginning. And people who go through that step by step and take the time needed to do that in a healthy way. And as I said, the neutral zone can be the more difficult one because of the confusion. So that's a good time to develop healthy structures, temporary structures. So I was working with a man whose relationship just ended and lost his job and didn't know what he was going to do. So we talked about temporary jobs that he might be able to take to get by with some income until he figured out where he was going for the rest of his life, because he had basically half his life ahead of him yet. And to just take a job because that was what was advertised and available and who hired him at that point and let that define his life, in a sense, would be a shame. If he could have a temporary structure enough to get by and get a sense of where his heart was and what he really wanted his life to be like, he's likely to be much more successful. So ending, neutral zone, beginning, take the time and effort to go through each completely, and you'll have a healthy transition. Thank you.